Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Some Stops Along the Way. This is actually our third episode that will deal with my time in Romania in the early 2000s. And today we're going to dig into the culture and some of the geopolitical context of this really amazing country. But before we do that, a couple things. First of all, July 1st is a big day because on July 1st, I have not one, but two novels that will be available on Amazon. They are part of a 3-book series, the first of which is called Mozart's Ghost. This is an action-packed 3-book series of fiction that I think will keep you engaged from beginning to end. If you like spy novels, these are the books for you because they'll take you all over the world and really help you identify with some unique and interesting characters. So I would encourage you on July 1st, jump onto Amazon, and the first two of the books, Mozart's Ghost and the follow-on book, When We Were Young, are available. And the third in the series, The Monsters Come at Night, will be available later on in the summer. Just wanted to remind you of that. Also, my memoirs, Some Stops Along the Way, are available on Amazon right now. Hope you'll jump on and get a copy. It is a great companion to this podcast, and it'll take you on a real roller coaster ride through countries all over the world and provide you some fascinating insight. All right, let's jump in now to some more information on Romania that I think you'll find interesting. You know, one of the things that we found in Romania when we first went there that was extremely interesting was its culture. Of course, the Romanian culture is an amalgamation of many cultures, including the Romans, who occupied Romania for a time, the Tatars, the Ottomans, the Slavs, the Huns. There were so many different people groups that traveled through and settled in Romania that the cultural mosaic is really profound. Of course, the two people groups there that we hear the most about are, of course, the Romanians and the Hungarians. But there are other ethnic groups and cultures that have joined together to create the mosaic of what is now the culture of Romania. Those of you who know me know that one of the things that I love to do is sample food around the world. And part of Romania's culture is its food. This is true of many countries around the world, but what I always loved about Romania was its food is very hearty, it's very good. It is, especially in the rural areas, it is very much tied to the mountain culture in areas like Transylvania, very much tied to the coastal culture in areas in around Dobrogea in the Constanța area near the Black Sea. But all over the country, the food is just amazing. And when you go to Romania, and I'm saying when, not if, when you go to Romania, I hope you'll try some. You know, I remember one of the first food experiences that I had in Romania was at the home of a person who worked for me at that time named Jan Anton. And Jan is just a great guy, and he and his wife invited me to their mountain house. Many Romanians have mountain houses called dachas, and his mountain house was in a very beautiful location, and it's very common when you go to someone's mountain house to enjoy not only the culture of the rural area, but some of the great food that they make. And so I was relatively new to the country, and Jan goes out to the grill and he makes some of the best small sausages that I've ever eaten. They're called mitite or meech. They're typically made out of a combination of pork and lamb. They have beautiful spices in them, and these things are addictive. I joked with my wife many times that I was going to need a 12-step program for meech when I left Romania. And many times meech is paired with corn porridge called mamaliga. And so Jan makes this huge platter of meech, which I immediately dove into because I love this. I love it. And it had some mamaliga there, had some fresh bread to wrap it all in, which was amazing. But the more I ate, the more I liked it, and it's very filling. But what I realized too late is that the meech was the appetizer. It wasn't the main course. And so Jan and his wife just kept bringing food. And that was my introduction to Romanian mountain cuisine, and a reminder to pace myself. As much as I love meech, don't fill up on meech and mamaliga because more is coming. Of course, another part of the mountain experience is, and not just mountain, but all over Romania, is suica. Suica is their home brew. It is the liquor that they make mostly at their homes. And when I was there, at least, a lot of people would take an empty 2 or 3 liter cola bottle and buy Suica by the side of the road, and they would just fill it up, and you'd be on your way. I've been asked a lot of times, what does Suica taste like? It comes, as I said, from their homes. Many people make it in their homemade stills. And I will tell you this, and I don't want to offend the Romanians at all because I love the Romanians very much, but this stuff tastes like rocket fuel to me. It always did. And it is very high in alcohol content, and something that if you go there, when you go there and try Suica, pace yourself because 2 or 3 of those will put you down. And I have actually been with visitors to Romania that imbibed in the local hospitality because Romanians are very hospitable people, and they especially want to treat you to their local cuisine and the Suica. And I have been with foreigners who have not lasted very long under those circumstances. So pace yourselves when you go there. Romanian bread, pâine, they call it, is fantastic. It's just an amazing, it's an amazing amalgamation of hard crust and light interior. And of course now they have Western bread as well. One of the funny things when we were living there is one day Christy, our driver, showed up with sliced bread and said, "Look what I found! I found this bread that's sliced." At that time, they didn't sell prepackaged sliced bread. You would buy bread at the store and homemade and cut it yourself, or in some cases they would cut it for you there. But finding prepackaged white sliced bread was almost unheard of at that time, and so it was kind of an anomaly. The Romanians have all different types of great cheeses. One called brunza that you would no doubt sample when you go there. They have great soups. My favorite was ciorba de pui, chicken soup. Where you put a dollop of sour cream in it. Just amazing cuisine, really. Anywhere in the country. But I especially love the cuisine in the mountain areas of Transylvania. It was just a really fantastic amalgamation of flavors and hearty, good, wholesome food. And part of the cultural experience in Romania is also tourism. Romania has become a very attractive tourist destination for that area of the world. And when I was there, tourism, of course, was important, but it was, I would say, in the early days of service delivery. And our project worked a lot with small guest houses and hotels and restaurants and other attractions, other tourism entities, to prepare them to promote tourism in a way that would be sustainable. And I'm glad to say they've done that. Especially the Rural Tourism Association has done an amazing job in Romania of providing excellent service in some of those most beautiful areas of the country to accommodate all types of tourists. When we were there, there was a tourism minister during that period named Dan Matai Agathon. I'll never forget it. And he was a very interesting guy. He wanted to promote tourism. I think his heart was in the right place. But he came up with a couple of ideas during that time that were quite strange from the standpoint of tourism. One of them was that he felt like that the Black Sea coast of Romania needed to have palm trees. Well, palm trees aren't native to Romania, so they're certainly not, we're not in place at the Black Sea. And so he, with state funds, purchased palm trees and had them planted at the Black Sea resorts along the beach. Well, the problem was that these palm trees were not full-size palm trees, obviously. They were very small palm trees. I was taller than any of these palm trees. Most of them died. It turned out to be a terrible idea and quite a joke at the time about all these little palm trees along the Black Sea coast. So heart was in the right place, but maybe not the best strategy. He also started talking about a theme park called that would be loosely called Dracula Land. Many of you know about Bram Stoker's book Dracula that was set in Transylvania. We'll talk more about that in a little while. But he believed that promoting Dracula, which of course is a fable, we'll talk more about it a little bit later in this podcast, but promoting Dracula would draw tourists from around the world. And so he had this concept of a Dracula theme park. Well, most of the Romanians, the great majority, were totally against this concept. It never happened, fortunately. And so there were some false starts in tourism in those days. But at the same time, there was more and more investment in tourism. You had Black Sea resorts being constructed. You had guest houses being built. You had funding for attractions began to increase somewhat. And so the impetus for tourism, the wheels of tourism really started to turn during that time and fire up the engine, which is now a very robust tourism industry in Romania. And it has some amazing attractions in this country. You just wouldn't believe it. I remember going up to the Bukovina area of the country, which is in the northeastern part of Romania. And they have painted monasteries there, where you might say, well, we've seen a lot of monasteries that have beautiful frescoes inside. Well, the difference is these frescoes are on the outside of the monasteries. Very ancient. Very beautiful monasteries. They have a bluish color in this paint that can't even be replicated today. So it's something that's very unique that you don't see other places in the world. They also have a very interesting cemetery up in the Maramurish area near Sigets, which is called the Mary Cemetery. It's a cemetery where you go and all the tombstones have a funny epitaph on them. I remember standing with my interpreter and feeling guilty about laughing at these epitaphs in the middle of this cemetery. But the tombstones are mostly made out of wood, painted in very bright, beautiful colors, with these funny sayings on them that give a little bit of an indication about the person, or in some cases even how they died. It's called the Mary Cemetery. You can look it up online. It's a very interesting place. As I said, Black Sea resorts have proliferated. It was fairly new at the time that I was there. One of the most modern resorts on the Black Sea when I was there was called Yaki, which was a resort. It's still there today. It was built by the great Romanian footballer Gheorghe Hagi, and more and more people started going to enjoy the Black Sea on the Romanian coast. There are also beautiful wetlands in the Danube, amazing history throughout the mountains of Transylvania, especially near Brasov, in Sighișoara, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Just amazing tourism opportunities in the country. And as I said, when we were there, many of them were fairly nascent, but once that engine got started, it really drove a lot of investment in tourism. And when you go to Romania today, you will see top-notch attractions, high-level accommodation, great food, and some of the most hospitable people in the world. So among Romania's cultural palette, amalgamized by all of these different cultures over the eons of time that led to their cuisine, their tourism offerings, Romanians also gravitated to the world of sport. Romanians, as most countries around the world do, love sports, and they've had some very notable sports figures over time. I'll tell you about a few of them. One of them, of course, is Nadia Comaneci. Most of us have heard of Nadia Comaneci, who won four gold medals for Romania in the 1976 Montreal Olympics, including getting a perfect 10 on the balance beam and winning the all-around. I remember, as I was a freshman in high school at that time, and I remember watching Nadia on television in the Olympics and just being blown away by the level of talent that she had. Of course, my family and I were rooting for the Americans, but you couldn't deny the talent that Nadia Comaneci had. She won so many golds, not just in the Olympics, but in the World Championships and many other competitions around the world. Her life after the Olympics was somewhat of a challenge, especially after her coach, Bela Caroli, defected to the United States. She was put under heavy watch by the Romanian Securitate, which was the feared secret police in the country under Ceausescu. And in November of 1989, right before the revolution that toppled Ceausescu, Nadia Comaneci defected got out of Romania into Hungary, and then went through Hungary and into Western Europe and defected to the United States. Of course, she married gymnast Bart Connor, and today they have their own gymnastics enterprise here in the United States. She has been back to Romania several times since then. But I wonder if she had, of course, if she had known that the revolution was pending in December, she probably would have waited because she could have gotten out much easier. But at that point in time, her life in Romania had become so challenging that she felt that her only choice was to sneak out of the country and defect. And of course, that was a huge story around the world because someone of Nadia's station in life and visibility around the world, that made huge news and was really an example of the crumbling Eastern Bloc at that point in time. Another great Romanian sportsman, Gheorghe Mureșan, who was 7 feet 7 inches, played in the NBA in the United States. I've already talked about Gheorghe Hagi, who was the most notable Romanian football player. He played for Galatasaray in Turkey, among other clubs. He's one of the best footballers of his generation. I saw a list not long ago where he's listed in the top 125 best footballers of all time. He has a great reputation in Romania. He coached the national team for a time. And of course, as I said, developed a number of businesses, including the Iaki Resort. That's IAKI Resort on the Black Sea coast. Another great sports person in Romania, Ilie Nastase, the tennis player, won the U.S. Open in 1972, the French in 1973, won at least 2 doubles titles at Wimbledon. Not the most revered tennis player of all time because of his notorious temper, but certainly a very talented tennis player and one that we used to see occasionally around Bucharest. He would be. We saw him one time driving his car. Another time biking in a park with his girlfriend at the time. So he was a pretty common sight around Bucharest in the days that we were there. Another great Romanian sports person, Simona Halep, who many of you have heard of. The tennis player won the French Open in 2018. Won Wimbledon in 2019, was ranked number 1 twice. So sports is endemic to the Romanian culture. And I could go on and on about great sports figures in Romania, but they revere sports very much. And especially being a youngster in the United States watching the Olympics, gymnastics was something that the Romanians, especially women's gymnastics, really excelled in and had a huge amount of success all throughout the 70s, the 80s, and beyond. So outside of the culture, the economy of Romania has changed as well. You know, economies constantly transition, subtly in some cases, more overtly in others. In Romania, their economy changed a great deal after the fall of communism. Romania has always been an agriculture of agriculture importance in the region, and even so today. Their agriculture products are shipped all over Europe. But since the fall of communism, especially in recent years, they've gotten into areas such as information technology, cybersecurity. One of the small IT companies that we worked with when I ran the project there has grown into one of the largest cybersecurity companies in not just in the country, but in the entire region. They've also gotten into areas like creative industries, filmmaking, television. While I was there, one of the first international movies was filmed in Romania called Cold Mountain. It was filmed in 2003, starred Jude Law and Nicole Kidman. And it made headlines in the country because it was one of the first studio pictures that was made in Romania. But since then, they've developed a really robust film and television industry. So it's really amazing at how Romania's culture has evolved over time, and its economy has evolved over time. I talked a little bit about tourism already, but all over the country, there are amazing tourist sites. One of the ones in Transylvania that we love to go to all the time, especially when we had visitors from outside of Romania, are the palaces of the kings, Peleș and Peleșur, especially during the spring and fall when the colors there were just amazing. And then going to Brașov, which is one of the most notable cities in Transylvania, going to Black Church there, going to the UNESCO World Heritage City of Sighișoara, amazing place. It's really like you're in a postcard when you go to Sighișoara. And of course, going to the small community of Bran to see Bran Castle. There's a lot of myth around this particular castle. Some people who have called it Dracula's castle, but it's really a myth, not reality. There was a regional strongman back in the 1400s named Vlad Dracul, and his son took over for him, and his name he was called Vlad the Impaler. Whether or not he actually impaled people, he impaled his enemies, is a subject of a lot of historical debate. But he was supposed to be a very bad guy from the standpoint of some of the things that he was reported to have done. Whether it's a legend or whether it's reality, we'll never know. But certainly he got this reputation. And so he became kind of the underpinnings for Dracula. It was, a legend has it, that he once dipped a piece of bread in one of his enemies, in some of his enemy's blood, and ate it. And this is where some of the legend comes from. But Bran Castle is a fantastic castle. It's a beautiful castle. Everybody should see it. But the whole legend around it, that Bram Stoker used it as his example for the castle in the book Dracula, which was published in 1859, is likely untrue, because Bram Stoker likely didn't even know this castle existed. But it's in Transylvania. It's certainly an iconic castle on its own, has a lot of legitimate history on its own. Everybody should see it at least one time. But the Romanians have capitalized on this myth of Dracula. Every year, for instance, on or around Halloween, there's a huge party at Bran Castle where people get dressed up in Halloween costumes and they party at what they believe to be, or what has been purported to be, Dracula's castle. So the Romanians have figured out a way to turn this into a tourist attraction over and above its historical importance. I already told you about things like the Mary Cemetery and the painted monasteries. Romania is just a plethora of opportunity from the standpoint of tourism. Of course, you couldn't talk about Romania without talking about its religion. And in the last episode, we talked about the Great Schism of 1054, when the Catholic Church split with what became the Orthodox Church. So the Orthodox Church is very much steeped in Romania. It's steeped in its history. It survived even the worst days of communism and came out the other side. When we were there, many Romanians were mostly secular, but still, when they passed a church, they would do the sign of the cross. They would have the priest come and bless their homes at least once a year and their belongings. So whether or not they actually went to church every week, they would still, that Orthodox culture was still steeped in their psyche. But also while we were there, evangelical religions started to proliferate. We went to an evangelical church. They're a Protestant church. And many others started cropping up in later years. As a matter of fact, in Baia even a church that would be considered, I guess, the Romanian equivalent of a megachurch developed. And so religion is an important part of Romanian culture. And I will say this, there are songs today, even when they're sung in our church here in the United States in English, that I remember in Romanian. As a matter of fact, all these years later, I'll catch myself singing those songs in Romanian while others are singing them in English. And I want to share with you right now one of those. Whether or not you are religious, I'm not trying to proselytize anyone, but faith is a big part of Debbie's and my life. And one of the songs that we used to sing when we were there in our church was a song called Come Now Is the Time to Worship. In Romanian, that's Hai Vino Acum Se Lauz. And the BBSO choir does a beautiful rendition of this church, or of this song rather, and I want to share it with you this morning. So take a listen as the BBSO choir from Baia sings Come Now Is the Time to Worship, Hai Vino Acum Se Lauz. Listen, this is beautiful. Wow. I don't care if you're religious or not. That's just good music right there and brings back a lot of memories, which is why I played it for you. That particular song we sung so many times, and to this day, when it's sung, I hear it in Romanian in my head and I have to sing along. So we've talked about different aspects of culture. We've talked about cuisine. We've talked about sport. We've talked about the economy. We've talked about religion. I want to give you a little bit of an overview of Romania's regions. Now, some of those that I visited and that were really interesting for us while we were there. One I've already talked about, which is Transylvania. Two really important cities in Transylvania are Brașov and Sighișoara, both very historic. As I said before, Sighișoara is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It literally is like stepping back into the Middle Ages. An amazing, amazing place. The Carpathian Mountains are fantastic. They're beautiful any time of year, but especially in the spring and fall. Absolutely amazing. And we were there at all times of year. There are great ski resorts in that area, which were very inexpensive when we were there. Wow, if you could go skiing in the United States for what we went skiing for in Romania, I might have skied a lot more in my life, actually. But very beautiful tourist infrastructure in the Carpathian Mountains in the Transylvania region of Romania. Also, Bukovina, up in that northeastern part of the country. Very, very beautiful place there as well. The great city of Suceava, the painted monasteries, so much in Bukovina to love, actually. In Maramureș, up in the north part of the country as well, are some really interesting things in that area of the country. I talked about the Mary Cemetery, but one of them is Sighet's Prison. This prison was opened in 1944. It was closed in 1977 and became a museum in the 1990s, but it was notorious throughout its history. It started off as a place for war prisoners, but then morphed into a place for where political prisoners were sent, especially under Ceausescu. Very notorious, soul-sucking place, but it's great to see as a tourist because it helps you understand the types of draconian methods that the communists used during those very bleak years in Romania. Also in that area around Sighet, you have the birth home of Elie Wiesel, the Nobel Prize winner. I mentioned Elie Wiesel on the last episode. Elie Wiesel was born in 1927 in Sighet, which was then the Kingdom of Romania at the time he was born. When he was 15 years old in 1944, his mother, father, and three of his sisters were sent to the camps by the Nazis. Elie and his father ended up in Auschwitz, and then later in the notorious Buchenwald camp. His father, mother, and youngest sister did not survive the Holocaust. Two of his sisters did, and of course Elie did. But all of that is chronicled in his book Night that I talked about in my last episode. Night will hit you hard, but it is an amazing historical record, if you will, of that period of history and about the life of Elie Wiesel and the transformation that he undertook in the prison camps of Auschwitz and Buchenwald. I will tell you, I've had learned so many leadership lessons from the book Night. Lessons of hope, but also lessons of resilience and lessons of how to deal with circumstances that are beyond one's control. It really is a foundational book for those who want to understand not just the historical aspects of the Holocaust, but the leadership lessons that one can learn from how Elie Wiesel lived his life and the care that he gave his father up until his father died just weeks before the Buchenwald camp was liberated by the Allied forces. So Elie Wiesel wrote a shortened manuscript of his experiences in French in 1955 called La Nuit. And in 1960, this was translated in English with the title of Night. As I said, he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1986. Unfortunately, Elie died in 2016. But a really iconic figure in Romanian history and one that is noted around the world. And then, of course, another region of the country that is just an amazing region is called Banat. One of the major cities in Banat is Timișoara, the Rose City, which is, as we talked about in the last episode, where the revolution really against Ceausescu really began. Have some very, very good friends there. And we did a lot of work in Timișoara while I was there. I remember a lot of times sitting at the cafe in the main square, especially early in the morning or late in the evening, and getting doused by the cleaning truck that came through the square, sprayed water everywhere. And it didn't matter if you were in a cafe or you were standing by the fountain, you were going to get wet during those days, I promise you. But Timișoara is a great city. They call it the Rose City for a reason, because it's just beautiful, beautiful in the springtime when the roses are in bloom. Another region of Moldavia, one of the main cities there is Iași, which is spelled I-A-S-I. A lot of great experiences in that region, a lot of great people. I remember a train ride that my colleague Carmen and I took in this region. We were leaving Iași. It had snowed a lot. Our flight back to Bucharest had been canceled, and I had meetings and things coming up. I was just desperate to get back to Bucharest, and so I got with Carmen and said, "Look, let's buy some train tickets. The train's still running. At that time, the berths in the train were 6 people. We bought all 6 tickets for the 2 of us, as we usually did, because they were very inexpensive. Carmen went to the market and got some food, and I remember, and she was not supportive of this idea of taking the train at all. By the way, I talked her into it, but she had got a little bit of food. We got on the train. We got in our berth. We sat there, and she is all bundled up, has her gloves on, her coat, her hat. It is freezing in this train. There is no heat, and we've got a long trip by train back to Bucharest. And so she's just sitting there kind of glaring at me, and the train leaves the station in Iași. Snow's piled up all around us. In fact, I think it was still snowing at the time. And a few minutes into the train ride, I said, look, can I have some of that food? And I'll never forget her very tersely taking off her gloves and reaching in and grabbing a banana or something in a juice box and handing them to me. She was not happy at all that we were taking the cold train ride back to Bucharest. We made it back to Bucharest. We were almost frozen when we did, but that's an enduring memory I will have of Iași. Also, there's a place up there near Iași called Little Texas. It was a restaurant and a little hotel, and it was called Little Texas because they served great Tex-Mex there. The owner had actually sent his chef to the United States to learn to make Tex-Mex food, and that's the first time that Carmen had nachos. in Tex-Mex food, and so I got to introduce her to that at a place in Moldavia near Yash called Little Texas. So just those enduring memories, that you don't forget and that always tie you to a particular place. Another really interesting area of Romania is Dobrogea, which is near the Black Sea. Constanța is one of the major cities there. An interesting thing about Constanța, it has a lot of Roman history there, by the way, and the Black Sea coast is very beautiful. When I was there, though, the accommodations left a little bit to be desired. I had a corollary for a lot of years about specific hotel names. When we did our episode on Kosovo, I told you about the Grand Hotel. I wouldn't stay in a hotel for years called the Grand Hotel because of the one I stayed in Kosovo. Well, here in Constanța, there was a hotel called the Palace, and this thing was far from a palace, by the way. I believe it's still open today. It's a 3-star hotel. But when I was there, I can't speak to it today, so if you own the Palace Hotel and you're watching this podcast, I apologize in advance to you. But when I was there, the Palace Hotel was far from a palace. It was a cold, drafty place. When I was there, the rain was pouring down. The service in the hotel wasn't good. And so I added that to my list of names of hotels never to stay in. So for years, I never stayed in the Grand Hotel. I never stayed in a hotel called the Palace because typically they were neither one. Anyway, these may be funny and trite stories, and maybe they're meaningless to you. But I think that what it shows is that the connection that I had to this place. It was my first long-term overseas assignment. Debbie, Daniel, and I will always remember Romania. We'll always think of it fondly. We'll always keep in touch with our friends there. Daniel graduated from high school in Romania. He went back to the United States to university with 2 or 3 others from his class in Romania at Bucharest Christian School. It was a place that launched my career in international development, and I can't think of any better place to have done that at such a dynamic time in the country's history as the time that we were there. I have nothing but good things to say about Romanians. I would strongly encourage you to visit the country, as with all the countries that I highlight on my podcast. There's greatness in every one of these countries. There are accommodating people in every one. There are beautiful attractions, and they're welcoming of cultures from around the world. So I encourage you to visit Romania at some point. But when you do now, hopefully, you'll have some additional information and additional context about the country that might be interesting for you. So we're wrapping it up with Romania today. Join me for the next iteration of some stops along the way, because we are going to get started on a profoundly interesting, confusing, maddening, unbelievable country of Afghanistan and my time there. Don't miss it. We'll see you soon. Join us next time on Some Stops Along the Way.